Hi, my name is Jason Turner,
And I'm Joel Indorf.
and we are RPA developers here at CampTek Software. Welcome to another episode of Camp, a podcast on all things automation. Today, we're going to go over the developer's perspective on how to hold a scope call. If you haven't seen the previous video on scope calls, or if you'd like to rewatch it, we'll include a link in the description. Joel and I have both been on quite a number of scope calls to figure out different ways that we could try to automate some of those processes. Through doing that, through our time, we've found a lot of things that have been really great and things that have been unexpected challenges. One of those challenges we've run into before, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, but it's been when someone might assume that we have the same type of knowledge that they have in the system that they're using.
Yeah, it's kind of like if someone comes in as a new hire and they're from a similar field in their background, they might be able to skip a couple steps in terms of learning the new system. They kind of know what to look for, things like that. This kind of goes back to the first video where Gretchen said some of our questions might seem silly. Part of that is because we might not know the system at all. We could be coming in never having seen this system before, especially if it is very specialized to your field. We may have seen it, we may have seen a version, we might not have seen the module you're using.
We need to know the specific process that you and your company with your team takes to make this process happen. Because while if you get stuck in the middle of working, you can turn to your coworker and say, oh, hey, how do I do this? The bot can't turn to its coworker. The bot doesn't have that ability to reach out and say, hey, I don't know what's going on here.
But the bot needs very granular instructions.
Yeah, and Joel, have you run into times where, say, a certain update on an application that you're using has updated and the entire user interface has changed and the way that you interact with something that you consistently use is now in a totally new location? Have you ever run into that before in just daily life, even unrelated to work?
Oh yeah, when a program updates and they change their user interface, ultimately it may be better, but there's still a little bit of a learning curve there. Um, the bot doesn't have a learning curve, though. That's one of the limitations and why we're here to go through this process with you.
Sometimes we like to know a little bit of the why that goes into making that decision, because sometimes the bot can process things in a way that's faster and more consistent than a human can. For example, if there's a full row of data about a certain client or a certain patient, the bot can remember every single aspect about that patient or that client at one individual moment. The bot doesn't need to hop back and forth between pages to remember that information. It can just grab the information and start running and go through everything start to finish.
I was going to say that's something I've encountered a few times where the person going through the process has two systems open, often, Windows side by side, and is copying, pasting from one field into another. The bot's going to open the first window, copy every bit of information that's needed all at once, then move to the next window, paste it all into the right fields, and then hit next, and it's done.
And that's one of the things that I just love so much about what RPA is capable of, is it operates like a human. It thinks kind of like a human. It interacts with the interface the same way that a human does most of the time. But there are certain special secret ways, if you would call them that the bot can interact with information and data in a way that a human can't. And you kind of get to merge the best parts of humanity with the best parts of AI.
I actually have an example for that as well that I recently encountered. There's one process that involved a lot of manipulation of an Excel sheet. And one of the steps, there was a column, let's just say column 1, that had a 4-digit number in it. That number started with either 11 or 12. In column 2, we wanted to put another value based on whether column 1 started with 11 or 12. So the employee processing this would sort by column 1. That way they could easily have all the 11s grouped up together and all the 12s grouped up together. there were several rows that were associated with each account that was being processed. So it would mess up all the rows. They would no longer be by account. It would be by column 1. And then they would put in all of the values in column 2 based on column 1, and then they would sort it back by account to get back to the original. Now, when I was watching this, I clarified with them that the only reason they were doing that sorting was to put the 11s and 12s together to make it easy to match the second value they needed to put in. I said, okay, the bot doesn't need to do that. It can just look and enter the second value much quicker than if a person was manually comparing them each time. So we just included that as part of processing each row. It would just look at column 1 and put the value in column 2. And it could just go through even faster. And that was one step of processing the row. It completely eliminated 2 entire sortings of the workbook, which are usually hundreds of lines long.
It's so cool to see what RPA is capable of, and it's so much fun. In my perspective, one of my favorite things to do is to sit in on those process scoping calls to see what somebody is currently doing at their desks and to say, how can we make this easier for you? How can we simplify this process? How can we streamline it from a bot's perspective using what computers can do excellently? And it can process those things really quickly, so why not utilize a bot to do those sorts of tasks, those parts of the tasks, and let humans focus on the parts that humans can focus on. We hope this was helpful. If you have any interest in setting up a scope call or sitting down to meet with us, talk with us, figure out how we could potentially automate one of your processes, please reach out to some CampTek sales associate or project manager, and we'd be happy to help. Have a great day.
See you next time.
Happy automating.
Bye.